You agree with me that data is just a bunch of numbers without proper and appropriate analysis. And as we know, wrong data analysis can have undesirable consequences for one's community and the population at large. So it is really important that this bunch of numbers are appropriately crunched using the appropriate statistical software to analyze them. Welcome once again.
Thank you very much, Ma, for setting the tone for every one of us to moving. And I'll just quickly want to just take it up from there. This section has been planned to be very interactive, and we have planned it systematically for the next 5 weeks for 2025 or 2024. And the objective is, if you don't know anything about data analytics before now, by the end of this 5 sections, you should be able to. Would appreciate if the person who is muted, who is unmuted, can please mute so that everybody can. Oluseun Amoson, if you could please mute. Okay, thank you. So in the next 5 weeks, so please ensure you don't miss any section. And it's also being recorded. So we're going to share the recording so that everyone can follow. All right. We got all your expectations, both in the registration form and even right now in the class section. And this is going to be the outline. We're going to look at a brief overview of statistics. Now, it's important that you understand some baseline statistics before we go into the proper analytics. And why is that important? It's just like someone who wants to prepare a meal. If you don't get the ingredients correctly, there is no way you're going to be able to prepare a proper meal. So I advise that have your notepads with you, take notes. In case we have questions, we'll be able to take questions at the end of the day. Unfortunately, for the section for today, it's supposed to be 2 hours for each week, but for today, we're going to do an hour. But next week, I promise that we'll try to make up from what we are not able to achieve this week. So, and in case I'm moving very fast, please let me know. Now, I'm going to look at an overview of statistics. We're going to look at variables. We're going to look at different types of data. Then we're going to look at the type of statistics. Then we'll go to downloading the STATA app. Now, when it comes to analysis, there are different kinds of tools people use for analysis. There is SPSS, there is STATA, there is RStudio, and all manner. However, different researchers determine and decide what they want to use. But STATA has been proven and RStudio has been proven to help a lot in making further kinds of analysis like machine learning, data modeling, and all of that. But for the purpose of this section of analysis, we are starting with the basics and we're going to build up from there. Okay, let's quickly move. Now, why do you need to know statistics? No matter anything you do in this world, if you cannot interpret trends, you are literally not able to make informed decisions. You have a whole lot of data sets, whether it's going to be in business, in science, in research, in projects, in numbers. You've collected 2,000 data sets from pregnant women. So what? What is it telling us? How can somebody who is investing, let's say, a $1 million US on programs make inference on those data sets? So it's important that we are able to pick all the data sets we have and analyze, not just analyze, and interpret. The second reason why you need to know statistics is that it gives better visibility to the audience, to your work, and to the audience you're speaking to. There are researchers all over the world today that they are doing great work, but because they do not know statistics, they cannot interpret it. They are still limited in a particular corner of the world or where they are doing their study. It also helps you take full ownership of your work. You know, gone are the days where you need to say, I need to speak to the statistician. They need to interpret this for me. Imagine you owning your own work. Imagine you owning your own results. You just run an analysis. You just did the work right now, and you want to quickly run something from the work. So you don't need to start running to say, hey, statistician this or statistician that. So for example, I might have something I need to do. I don't need to start going to call on it. I will just quickly up on my STATA app, which I have on my system, quickly import. Please, can we all see the screen I'm sharing right now? So I can just quickly up here, quickly import what I want to run, then quickly run it, then go back to what I need to do. So you don't need to start waiting to say that I need to get this person to run. Please, can we all see my screen? I need us to respond so I can be sure that.
Yes, please, we can see, please. We can see, doctor.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, we can see.
I just quickly up on my screen, do whatever I need to do, whatever I want to run, So you don't need to depend, so to say, on any, so you can see. So that is already happening there. So that's one of the other reasons why you need to own your data. And to be honest, the person really owning the data owns the narrative. No matter what you do, if somebody else is owning your data, you are not really in charge of what you're doing. All right. So it also helps you interpret previous studies and for you to plan new studies. So nothing sits alone. So for example, a business is setting up, let's say or they're doing a study in, let's say in Nigeria and South Africa, and want to plan other studies in other maybe low and middle income countries, say Bangladesh or probably Gambia. So from the trends we've noticed from the Nigerian and South African study, we could probably just say, okay, what inference can we make from there that will inform the new study that we are planning? Then it also helps you, it positions you to contribute to knowledge and decision-making in your areas of expertise. Okay, so we are clear in this. Now, let's go to the next slide that talks about, this is just setting a background for you to understand what statistics is all about. And really, statistics owns the numbers. Big organizations like WHO, UNICEF, what are they doing? They will tell you 4 out of 10 children are stunted. That's statistics. How did they get that? Or they will tell you XX numbers of mothers are suffering from chronic malnutrition. Right? So all of these things were aggregated from large data sets. And the truth of the matter is that the tool you're going to use to analyze 100 samples or 100 data sets is the same tool you're going to use to analyze 100,000 data sets. The same code you will use to run 10 data sets will be the same code you're going to use to run 100 data sets. So it helps researchers to uncover plans, trends, relationships within data. So for this introduction today, we're going to understanding what is data. Because you see, what you don't understand, how do you interpret and how do you analyze? And I feel that's where a lot of people make mistake from. They collect age, they collect height, they collect, various kind of data in their profession. In my next slide, I'm going to ask you to tell me what are the kind of data you're working on. So as we go on in this section, each and every one of us are going to be analyzing our data set ourselves, as a proof that you've understood the concept. So please make sure you're following me. In case I'm moving too fast, please let me know. It's also used across various fields. It's used in sciences, medicine, business, technology to support evidence-based decision. Take note of that. Because you don't just make decisions based on emotions. You want to check trends. What is happening? We invested X amount of US dollars into a project. What is happening after 10 years of investment? What is the fallout? What is the turnout? What is the turnover? What are the outcomes? So we already set these outcomes from the beginning, ab initio, when we start a project or a research work. What are the findings? What associations are we checking? So there are a lot of things you could do. Then core methods include descriptive, inferential, and ultimately statistics help us to transform raw data into meaningful insights. Take note of that. So without statistics, the data is still raw. It does not make meaning to anybody. We can't understand what you're talking about. So statistics helps us now transfer all those raw data sets that everybody has collected. Then we sit on our devices and we make meaningful insights out of it. Okay. Now, types of data sets. Quantitative and qualitative study. Can you type in the group what you understand by these two types of study before I proceed? Everyone, please, can we make this very interactive? What you understand? Okay. So please, can we type in the chat box what we understand by this type of data sets? Please, let's make this fast. I'm waiting for people to respond. I've not seen anything yet. I just need to be sure that we are following. So in your previous knowledge of statistics and doing projects, doing research, when they say a study is quantitative, what do you understand by that? And when they say study is qualitative, okay, Joshua says the first set is for numbers. All right, any other person? This is very important. This slide is very, very important. I'm expecting others to please respond. If you don't know, you can say you don't know, which is fine. If you do, you could just type what you know about that. So the first set of study is for numbers, yes. Any other response? And if you want to unmute as well, you could just signify and talk. So quantitative and qualitative. When they say study is quantitative, what do you understand by that? And when they say study is qualitative, what do you understand by that? And what kind of study are we doing currently in our respective, field? Okay. If I don't have up to 3-4 responses, I might not move on. So I would just want to be sure. Okay, North Jaffet says quantitative data sets deals with numeracy or numbers, while quantitative deals with description. Okay. All right. Any other response? Let's have one more. Can we have one person on mute and say something to this and tell us what kind of data set are you currently working with? Quantitative is interpretation based. Okay. So can we have one person on mute and tell us confidence allergy? Qualitative is about non-quantifiable data sets. Fantastic. So can one person unmute and tell us what kind of data set are you working on? Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and good evening all. So I think I'm currently working on the both data. I'm working on the quantitative and also the qualitative data, of which we conducted a mixed study research actually. So we collected the quantitative data using the questionnaire, and then we collected our qualitative the data and the using the interview. So actually, we are trying to use the SPSS to analyze the quantitative data, just to see the percentages, the frequencies, and the percentages of the responses. While the qualitative data, we want to use the in vivo, and where we use the thematic analysis, to see the different teams and then how they come, the reputation, the most repetitive team, using the triangulation method to arrive at the final teams. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for that response, Nos Jaffet. So yes, Mrs. Somitila, thank you for your response. Quantitative, matrix of numbers, qualitative in-depth interview, excellent. Now, please take notes for this particular training. We're focusing on quantitative studies. So studies that actually had collected data matrix of questionnaires. You have people filling different kind of response based on what you seek to achieve. I'm happy, Nos Jaffet, you're able to tell me that you have a study already that you want to analyze with SPSS. So for you, I have an objective for you already. At the end of this study, you should be able to do your descriptive using STATA. That way, you have achieved the goal. at the end of this cohort of program, which will last till first week in December, right? So that's already an objective for you, Nurse Japheth, for your current study. If I'm right, you already have your data set in Excel, right? So it's moving to analysis stage. Is that correct, Nurse Japheth?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
yes, sir.
perfect.
Already cleaned the data. So I
Oh.
think it's ready for analysis. So I think I'll wait after the class and I'll try to use this data.
Fantastic.
I think it's still one of my aims of even attending, just so that I'll move from the normal SPSS so that I can be using this data.
Fantastic. So I'm expecting every one of us to please pick your own objective. I would advise that make sure you have some data sets, either from your previous study or some simple data set you're going to use to practice. Because from experience, when you learn things like this and you don't practice immediately, the tendency that you will forget exists. So once I send you the link to download the free version of STATA, and we start working on data sets, please have some few data sets around that you can start using to do your descriptives and some of the basic things. Okay, let's proceed. We've agreed that we're focusing on quantitative. Now let's go to the next slides. Now, this is where a lot of people make a lot of mistakes from. When it comes to analysis, whether you're using STATA, SPSS, RStudio, whatever tool you're using to do analysis, the interpretation is same. Does it make sense? So you're either doing descriptive statistics, or you're doing univariate analysis, or you're doing bivariate analysis, or you're doing multivariate analysis. Should I take that again? And I'll take my time to explain the four of them. Should I go about it again, or are we all fine?
It's clear, sir.
It's clear. Please move ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir.
So, descriptive, univariate, bivariate, and multivariate. Now, we said it's clear. Can somebody tell me the difference between univariate and bivariate?
Univariate is we are working with one variable.
Yeah.
Okay.
And bivariate analysis, we are taking two variables.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And multivariate analysis, we are having multiple variables. All right. So, and the kind of analysis you use varies in each of those kind of analysis. The kind of method, statistical analysis method you're going to use or process would vary, whether it's univariate, bivariate, or multivariate. Okay. So that takes into the next slide that talks about the type of variables. Now, this is also a point where people begin to mix it up. So your variables can either be numerical, categorical, binary, and sometimes people use interval or ratio, to under quantitative variables. All right, so from the word quantitative, it is numerical. So you have age, and you have things like weight, temperature, they are measured. Now, under quantitative, it's either continuous or discrete. Please, can we all take note of these facts? Because they would begin to play later on when we're going to be talking about multivariate and bivariate kind of analysis. Are we noting that down somewhere? Especially when we talk about continuous and discrete variables. For this section, we're not going to go into regression analysis and all of that, but later on, when you're going to start doing other kinds of analysis, maybe 2025 under MSciClinic, we're just doing the basics for now, the continuous and discrete variables plays a very key role on the kind of analysis that you can run. But for now, we're starting with crunching, very soft content for now. But as we move ahead, this will play a very key role. So take note. For quantitative, yes, they are all numbers and numerical. One is continuous. They can have decimal. Does it make sense? For example, your height. Your height can be 1.75 meters. Is that correct? Your weight can be 95.2 kilogram. Is that right? But for discrete variables, you know, they are specific. They don't have all of those decimal points. Now let's go to categorical. Now, categorical variables are variables that they have categories, but they can either be nominal or ordinal. When they are ordered, you call them ordinal from the word ordered. Does that make sense? When they are ordered, you call them ordinal. For example, education, graduating from primary to secondary to tertiary. But when they are not ordered, that they can just happen in non-inherent order, you call them nominal variables. Now, this is not in my slide, but I think I need to mention it here quickly. The kind of tests you use for categorical variables are called, one of the kind of tests used for categorical variables is chi-square tests. It's not in my slide, but can you please take note of that? Please, can we all take note of that? And one of the kind of tests, I want to be sure that we are all following me. I like a lot of feedback. So when I request for feedback, I appreciate if 1 or 2, 3, 4 persons can provide that for me, so that I'm sure that the communication is two ways. So what did I say? The kind of test we use for categorical variables?
You said it's chi-square test.
Chi-square test.
Test. All right. So it means that if you have variables that are numerical and you see somebody saying is running chi-square, is that correct?
No.
No.
Good. So please take note of that somewhere in your notes. So that by the time we are matching the pieces together, you are beginning to understand the reason why we chose this kind of tests and the reason why we are choosing this kind of tests. Now, in the places where you have quantitative variables, some of the basic kind of tests that you can run there is t-tests. And there are different kinds of t-tests. Does it make sense? Depending on your topic. Are we still all following?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Good. All right. So we'll be describing each of those tests later on to say that this test is checking these versus these, right? This test is checking that versus that. We'll be describing it later on. Doesn't make sense, but just keep it somewhere. That when you have numerical variables, the tests. Okay, Shamima Taira is asking that, can I repeat? Thank you for asking, because this part is a very, very, very important. That's why a lot of people miss out these parts, you know, and this is the part that will build up to your regression analysis, that will build up into your, you know, causal effect analysis, that will build up into your modeling, that will build up into your checking all manner of mixed effect models and all that. So these baselines information are what you're going to form, you know, to start moving. But don't forget that I said you start first of all with descriptive analysis, then univariate analysis. Now I'm saying that, let me just quickly run that quickly for Shamima. Let me just run that for Shamima. For studies that make use of numerical data sets, which can either be continuous or discrete, you use t-tests. So I want to check, for example, blood pressure. I want to check diastolic, systolic. I want to check what again? Whatever variable that has numbers. So one of the tests I want to use is t-test. Now, how to use the t-test is what we're going to be learning going forward. When to use it, what kind of t-test? Again, the next one is chi-square test. There are other kinds of tests, right? But this is just for you to understand that anywhere you see numerical, one of the kind of tests you can do is t-test to check an association between variables. All right, thank you very much. Now, the type of variables we have is binary. These are specific type of categorical variables with only two possible categories, yes or no. Does it make sense? They are still categorical, but they are either what? Yes or no. pass or fail, true or false. All right. Then the other one is interval and ratio. Now, sometimes they are grouped under quantitative variables, and we have things like interval variables. These have ordered values with minimal difference, but no 0 points. For example, temperature in Celsius. Then we have ratio variables. These are similar to interval variables, but have true 0 points, allowing for meaningful ratios. Example, height, weight, and income. All right, so sometimes they are grouped under quantitative variables. Okay, I go to my next slide, and this slide is very important. What can we see here?
Dependent versus
Dependent.
independent.
This is very important. This is where you begin to do analysis. You want to do any work or any project. I want to check if, for me consuming this bottle, what effect would it have on my BMI? So the volume of what I'm consuming versus my BMI after consuming over a period of time. That's another variable. So how many variables have I had there now? Volume, time, BMI.
BMI.
Does it make sense? So it's you understanding before you, why I'm spending my time in this. I'm not going to spend my time in this next week. We're going to go straight into the data cleaning because we have only 5 weeks for this year. This November till the first week in December. And that'll be all for this year. So I'm not going to spend my time understanding this, in explaining this again. You probably go to the YouTube to check the recording again and refresh yourself. But you see, if you miss this out, honestly, you cannot even be able to make any proper interpretation of any data you're working on. Does that make sense? So can somebody tell me, what do you understand by dependent variable? Somebody please tell me, what do you understand? Yes, anyone?
Okay, yeah, so from my understanding, I can see that dependent variables are variables that has relationship with one another.
Okay. When you say relationship, what do you mean?
Like just like you mentioned, BMI, just like the last example you mentioned, you can actually see that you can actually see that you can actually see that there's a relationship between BMI and I can't actually there's a relationship between BMI and what you were consuming. If I actually
Yes,
go
sir.
to that.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. For instance, a dependent variable is actually, it depends on independent variable. Looking at the English word, dependent and independent. So dependent variable depends on independence. Why independent variable depends on maybe some external factors, For example, when you measure the speed of a car, it actually affects the time it will take to reach a certain place. So the time taken is dependent, which depends on the speed, which is independent. So the independent variable depends on independent, dependent variable depends on the independent variable. That's the way I understand it, sir.
Okay, thank you. So this part,
I think the dependent variable changes relative to the independent variable. That's just the sum of everything.
okay, thank you. At the end of today, everybody would get to the same page to understand that. Thank you everyone for your feedback. And this is just to help you take note of this, that this particular is what it is, this variable you're going to be putting into your STATA or your statistical analysis tool to make interpretation. And if you're going to conduct a study, for example, Amarachi, what do you currently work on?
Okay, so I don't actually have a study that I'm working currently on.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what's your field? What's your field?
Okay, I work with public health domain.
Okay, so what do you do there?
Okay. Well, I'm a quality person. I ensure that our implementation has quality in it.
Okay, so let's say, can we all see my screen, please? Please, can we see
Not yet. It's still loading.
Yes, sir, we can see.
Okay, so let's look at it now. Marachi works in the quality space, and let's say we're saying that number of trainings of field staff, right, in a quarter. And another variable is checking quality of output. All right. So we'll collect data sets to say that in our field staff, what, how many receive training, then one natural quality of output. Now, and we've collected data sets from, say, 100 offices. So from what I'm trying to explain now, which do you think would be the dependent variable and which would be the independent variable? Quality of outputs, Mr. Somitola, thank you. Any other person? If another person wants to give it a try. Do we all agree?
I think I agree. The quality of output is dependent and number of trainings of a field staff is independent.
Thank you very much. So now we have that understanding because this would help us.
Sir, hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, the training itself, I think is also independent, right? The training itself, because the output of the quality and the number of staff that actually did the training are depending on the training. So I think this training itself is also an independent variable.
Yes. So by the time we want to go further down to check, what do you call it now? I want to go further down to check the quality of the training, So we're going to bring in many variables now. Does it make sense? And what we just did earlier now, the number of training, how many variables do we have there?
So we have two.
Two variables.
We have two variables.
And that's when you talk about what kind of analysis?
By variance.
By variance. Does it make sense? So,
yes.
It's also possible for us to check the training over time. Right? It's also possible for us to check the training over time. So there are a lot of, different ways, but start allowing your statistical brain to start opening up, as we begin to move ahead. Okay, so let's move on. Now, in different fields, they call dependent and independent variable different terminologies. Some call it outcome and predictor variable, especially in medicine. Does it make sense? When you want to start running things like odds ratio, you want to start running things like trying to see some studies at different levels of confidence intervals. You want to start checking, adversity ratio, odds ratio. You want to start running some regression analysis, Oh, we have just about 15 minutes. I need to move fast now. Okay. So some also call it response or explanatory variable. Then comes, in some field, they call it predictor or manipulatory variable. Does it make sense? So the choice of analysis we're going to run will be determined based on 4 key things. Number 1, the type of variables. Earlier on, I said that if it is numerical, Give me an example of analysis that you run for numerical variable.
Age is an individual variable. Age.
No, I
Age,
didn't say give me,
size.
I didn't say describe the variable. Example of the kind of analysis that you run on those variables.
T-test.
T-tests, correct. If it is categorical, what kind of analysis do you run there? Just one example. There are other types. There are so many. I only gave you one. Chi-square
Square
test.
test.
Does it make
Chi-square
sense?
test.
So the kind of
Yes, sir.
analysis you run, once you see a data, it will tell you. So for example, you see a data that talks about primary, secondary, tertiary. You already know I'm not going to run t-test in that. Does it make sense? Because what I have is categorical. Are we following? So as we proceed, we'll begin to understand when do we use ANCOVA. Does it make sense? When do we use ANOVA? Does it make sense? When do we run correlation? When do we run regression analysis? When do we does that make sense to us? 2, it's also determined by the number of variables. I missed out something in this slide, and I need to quickly add that to it. I missed out something in this slide. I need to quickly add that to it. Okay, I think I've added that to it now. That is the part a lot of people miss. And please take note of this. This part I said I've missed out. When you're running analysis, in fact, if you're submitting your work for an international conference and they see the kind of analysis you run, they will know whether you understand what you're doing or you don't understand what you're doing. Now, I said we're going to wrap up now in the next, say, 10 minutes. Then I'll give us an assignment to go and download the STATA app. Please, while we are having this, can we all drop our names and locations? Because at the end of the file, we're going to give us certificates. And to get certificates, you need to attend 80% of the section. So please drop your names, where you are, your location, and email. So it's from those details I'm going to send to you the link to download the STATA app. So please drop it on the chats before this section ends in 12 minutes. Pardon me, I need to end in 12 minutes because I'm crossing to join another meeting. But from next week, we'll have full 2 hours because by next week, we're going to be doing practicals. So you all will share your screen with me. I will see you putting your codes. If you're having challenges with your codes, we'll look at it closely. Now, let me quickly run to nip the message on the board. Now, I've said types of variables, number of variables, right? So, don't forget the number of variables will let us know if it is one variable, what kind of analysis is that? Univariate.
Number of variables.
Univariate analysis.
Univariate. If it is 2 variables.
Bivariate.
Bivariate. Then we have multiple variables. Right. Now, the other part is the hypothesis to be tested. They will ask you, you're doing a study, they will ask you, what is your hypothesis? Does it make sense? So, for example, Amarachi that is working on training, by the time you applied to the organization that gave you 1 million US, whatever amount they gave you, you say, we are hypothesizing that by the time we increase the quality of training to nurses that delivers antenatal health talk during antenatal clinic, we would be able to have the mothers comply to their usage of multiple micronutrient supplements. That's an hypothesis. Training versus compliance. So that will also make us try to know the kind of analysis to run. So somewhere, I hope I will have the time, we're going to talk a little bit about hypothesis testing, where we're trying to know what are we testing between the dependent and the independent variable. The last one people miss out from is the test of normalcy. And please take notes of this. Before you run, please write this down somewhere. Before you run any analysis, you must check, is the data that I'm running, is it a data that it's under the normal curve, or is it not under the normal curve? Take notes, and I will explain why. If the data you are running is skewed, you don't measure mean. You don't measure mean. Mean is a measure of central tendency. If the data is skewed, you measure median. Please take notes. And the data set I mentioned, the analysis I mentioned to you earlier, which is t-tests and chi-square tests, they are only used for data sets that assumed normalcy. Do we all get that, or do I say it again?
Please, can you repeat that again?
Now, I said that for every data set that you have, it's either having a normal shape or the data is skewed. Is that clear? It's either having a normal shape or the data is skewed. Now, if the data is skewed, you cannot run parametric analysis. Parametric analysis are for data sets that are normal. And by normal, it means that the data, when you run it in STATA, it has a bell shape. Another way to don't, so we're going to in the next class, we're going to be looking at test of normalcy. So before you run any analysis, the first thing you do is test of normalcy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Understood.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen now for you to understand what I'm talking about. Can we see my screen? We took PCV,
Yes, sir.
we took PCV of some mothers at baseline, and we took their PCV at 4 weeks. Now, for somebody who doesn't understand statistics, you just go and run mean. Have you seen some data sets? You see median there. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
In some reports, in some data sets, you see median. Is that right or wrong?
Yes, sir.
Right. Yes, sir.
Do you know why they run median and why they run mean?
No.
So that is the reason I'm giving to you now. Any data set that is not normal, you cannot run mean. What you run is median. Does that make sense? Because for you to run mean, it means you're looking for the average, right? And the data must assume normalcy. Now, taking PCV at 4 weeks, the first thing I need to do is to check, is this my data normal? So I give you this code to check it. Histogram weeks, you'll be learning the codes later. I'll also be giving you codes so that you will save the codes. So that when you're practicing, you'll be testing the codes. I advise you save the code somewhere in a good database because you can be reusing them for various data sets. Now, this is the code to check for normalcy, one of the ways. Can you see my screen?
We can't anymore, sir.
I think I need to share the full screen. Now, can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We can see.
Now, this curve now, is it a bell shape?
It's skewed.
It's skewed. So anybody who reports this PCV and reports mean, any serious presentation with does know that this person doesn't know what he's talking about. Because for you to report mean, your first thing is to remove the outlier. Does that make sense? And for you to remove the outlier, you just check the data set again and see which one is. So you can see now, you just check data set and see which one of the values is. I can just do edit PCV and check the value. So if you look at these are the PCV values here, you know. So you want to check, is there any mistake there? So if you check and you find that there's no any mistake, you can make a decision. It's either you clean up the data and make sure it's no longer skewed. That's one way. Then you can report mean. Are we following? Or you leave it the way it is and report what?
Median.
For the median.
And report the median. All right. So I hope I've not confused you. Are we still in the same page so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So please, test of normalcy, very, very important. So you once you get all your data set, the first thing you want to check is it normal? If it is normal, then you know you can run parametric tests, which includes mean. All those t-tests, chi-square, they are parametric tests. What did I call it? They are what?
Thanks.
They are parametric tests.
Parametric tests.
Parametric.
Yes. If it is not normal, there is some other kind of test they're going to run. There is the non-parametric tests of chi-square tests. All the codes are there. They are on, maybe I should just go to STATA and show you that quickly. So if you look at my STATA app now, you know, if you look at statistics, you will see all the codes for parametric. The good thing about why I love STATA is that it's as a way that you can just, can you see non-parametric? Can you see that now? Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Do you see non-parametric there? So
Yes,
if you
sir.
don't know this thing, you just throw any analysis and people don't be like, what's this person doing? So the first rule of thumb for all the data you have cleaned is to check for what?
Normalcy.
To check
Normalcy.
For normal.
normalcy. Thank you. That's the first rule of thumb. Are all my data sets assuming the bell shape? When you check for normalcy, there are two options. You either clean up and make it assume normal and you run parametric tests. But if you don't want to, you don't always have to run parametric tests. Does that make sense? If you are sure that all the data sets you collected it very well, there are some data that will never be normal. You get my point? We don't expect you're collecting things from people from various populations, everything will be normal. No. So if it is skewed and you want to report median, it's allowed. So you see some table, they will report median. They will now report upper limits and lower limits. Then the median in brackets. Does it make sense? So once we have done that, then we now begin to decide, are we running a parametric test or a what? Non-parametric test. Does that make sense? So you see all these, your ANOVA, your t-test, your chi-square test, they are what? Parametric what? Tests. So somebody whose data is not normal and he runs t-test, is that correct?
No, it is not.
Not.
What should the person have done?
You should clean up the data or you should report median.
God bless you. It means that I've done a good job today. I thought I was shooting too fast. So on that note, it will be a good point for me to say congratulations. Actually, the beginning, when I had this STATA training several years ago, this is always the critical part. Once you get, for example, people who don't join this part and they join next week, I'm so sure it's going to be a lot of struggle for them, because from next week now, we're going to this: data coding, data cleansing, deciding which variables to analyze, exporting data to STATA, and introduction to descriptive analysis. So for somebody who doesn't come, who has not attended these, I'm not sure the person will drag us back. And I'm not sure we want that, except maybe the person go and listens to the video on YouTube to catch up.
Yeah. So I just dropped a question. If the YouTube link of today's session can be shared to enable us to revisit it later.
Yes, definitely. It would be shared by the admin to us via the email. So from next, we're going to go into this: data coding, data cleansing, deciding what variables to analyze, exporting data to STATA, and introduction to descriptive analysis. Okay, but before then, I'd like to give us some some few classwork on so somebody who did a study to check association between blood pressure and life expectancy. What's the dependent variable and independent variable?
Can you take the question again, sir?
Sir, the blood pressure is dependent variable. No, sir. The life expectancy is dependent variable, while the blood pressure is independent variable.
The blood pressure is independent variable and outcome or dependent variable will be like life expectancy.
Correct.
Yes, sir. Life expectancy is independent variable, while blood pressure is dependent variable.
Yes, sir. The blood pressure is independent.
Yeah, mixing it up, please. Some of you guys are mixing it up. Both of you said two different things.
The blood pressure is independent variable, and the life expectancy is dependent variable, sir.
That's it.
Yes, correct. That's it. So you can see that it's very possible to mix it up. So let's say somebody.
Can you throw more light why the blood pressure is independent, why life expectancy is dependent?
Okay, so I want one participant who has to help us with this. Who is volunteering?
I think the blood pressure is independent because depending on the blood pressure, so the life expectancy will be dependent on the blood pressure, because if you don't have a good blood pressure, you can have heart attack, you can have critical health issues which could reduce the life expectancy. But if the blood pressure is at a normal rate, then we can expect a longer life. So that's why I think the blood pressure is the independent variable and the life expectancy is the dependent variable.
Yes, sir. For me, the life expectancy. Okay, how can you measure life expectancy? In this example, it is from the blood pressure. So there's no way you can know the life expectancy, like how long will you live and all that, if you don't know what your blood pressure is. So the life expectancy is dependent on blood pressure. In other words, the blood pressure is independent, So if I can relate it to a product, because I work in a food processing, it's just like talking about shelf life. How can you know shelf life if you don't measure the moisture content of a product? Do you understand now? So the life expectancy is dependent on blood pressure. If not, you will not know how long you will live if you don't measure your blood pressure. Thank you.
So that's it, Amarachi. So one is predictor, one is outcome. So one is leading to the other. So your blood pressure is the one that is determining your life expectancy. So that means that your life expectancy is which one did you say is dependent now?
The life expectancy is independent. So it's dependent.
Correct.
And the blood pressure is dependent.
Correct.
So does that mean that the blood pressure is the predictor and the life expectancy is the outcome?
Correct. So, as you master these things, sometimes that's why you must just make sure you keep practicing and all of that. So on this note, I want to say thank you everyone for a very interactive section. Actually, 13 people started this class by 5 o'clock and 13 are still here 1 hour after. So it means this 13 persons means business. So that gives me joy that it's going to be a very interactive section and we're going to be working with a lot of data sets. So please download the STATA app before next week. We'll send the link via email for everyone to download it from the drive, because from next week, we're going to start working on going straight to data sets to cover those things I've mentioned. Okay. Thank you so much. We're going to also share a link to our LinkedIn page. Please like it and share feedback so everybody can understand that you've learned a few things. And maybe by the time we have another call for 2025, others too can also benefit from it. About my motivation, I did this because I benefited from a lot of training in Nigeria and in Australia. and it has helped my work personally. So I felt that I needed to give back, and I discussed with a few people, how do we organize a training for just 40 people? I wanted it to be more than 40 because I wanted to be sure that these people are following, we can control the class, it's interactive. If somebody is missing out, they can quickly, reach out to say that we're not getting it. If it's more than 40, people might probably not be free enough to express themselves. So that's the reason why we caged that class at that number. So I'm looking forward to looking at your interesting data sets. Most possibly in the next years to come, you'll be teaching me analysis as well. So see you next week, Friday, and have a good evening.